18-year-old Jacquelyn Jackie Rains-Kracman was last seen by her family on September 24, 1965, at her parents' home in Columbus, Ohio. That day, she left her 2 children in their care, telling them she was going to attend a wedding in Glenwood, Iowa, with her roommates. But Jackie never returned to collect her children, and before long, her parents began to worry. When they spoke with Jackie's roommate, they discovered something unsettling. She had come back from Iowa, but Jackie hadn't. Even more disturbing, the roommate admitted that she had dropped Jackie off somewhere, but refused to say where. Years later, when authorities finally looked into Jackie's disappearance, they uncovered a shocking truth. There was only one couple who had gotten married in Glenwood that weekend, and they had never even heard of Jackie or her roommate. Investigators began to suspect that the 18-year-old had left of her own volition. At the time of her disappearance, Jackie was going through a difficult divorce. She had married young, just 16 years old, and had her first child shortly after. But in early 1965, the marriage fell apart, and by September, her husband had officially filed for divorce. Her sister recalled something strange. Jackie had packed 2 suitcases for the trip, which seemed excessive for a simple weekend getaway. And then, another eerie detail surfaced. Jackie's car was found parked outside her home after she vanished, but her suitcases were gone. Meanwhile, 31-year-old Melvin Uphoff disappeared under equally mysterious circumstances. Exactly 1 month later, Melvin was last seen in Rising City, Nebraska, after spending the day with his wife and 4 children. That night, October 24, 1965, he had dinner with his parents, then told his wife he was stepping out to buy beer, but he never came home. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered that Jackie and Melvin had been having an affair and ran away together. Melvin had vanished along with his prized coin collection and his 1954 Oldsmobile. His vehicle was never found, and by the 1970s, he was officially declared dead. For decades, their families were left with nothing but unanswered questions. According to the Charlie Project, Jackie wasn't even reported missing until the 1990s. Her sister later stated, "I really don't think there was an investigation. If there was, it didn't amount to much." Incredibly, a 2008 documentary revealed that police had never interviewed Jackie's roommate or estranged husband. Even more chilling, Jackie's sister believed she had seen Jackie after her disappearance. She claimed that a woman who looked just like her missing sibling attended their mother's funeral and once even showed up at her workplace. Both times, she vanished before anyone could question her. For over 4 decades, nobody knew what had happened to Jackie and Melvin, until May 2009. That year, authorities tracked them down and spoke to them over the phone. The truth? Jackie and Melvin had deliberately left their families behind to start a new life together. Nebraska State Patrol spokeswoman Deb Collins stated that the 2 had committed no crimes and had left of their own free will. She refused to disclose their location, saying they had requested privacy. But one question remains. After 44 years apart, did they ever reach out to the 6 children they abandoned? That part of the story remains unknown. Tanya Kach-McCrum made national headlines when she suddenly disappeared in the mid-1990s. A student at Cornell Middle School in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, 14-year-old Tanya was befriended and ultimately groomed by the school's security guard, Thomas Jose, a man 24 years her senior. It all started when Jose caught Tanya skipping class, but instead of turning her in, he promised to keep her secret. Grateful for his understanding, Tanya took a liking to the older man. Over the next few months, Jose began pulling her out of class to talk. He showered her with gifts, sweets, flowers, even money for cigarettes. Slowly, he manipulated her, making her feel like he was the only person who truly cared about her. In 1996, Tanya was at her most vulnerable. Her home life was turbulent. Her parents were going through a nasty divorce, and she was relentlessly bullied at school. She started skipping classes more and more, and every time Jose was there, feeding her the same idea. "You should leave home. Move in with me." Then, one day, he kissed her in the stairwell. In her young mind, she believed it was love. On February 10th, 1996, Tanya made the decision that would change her life forever. She turned up at Jose's house in McKeesport, just a few miles from her own home, relieved to finally have a fresh start. But the moment she walked through that door, the nightmare began. Jose lived with his parents and adult son, and he went to extreme lengths to keep Tanya hidden. He confined her to his small bedroom, forcing her to use a bucket as a toilet. She wasn't allowed to leave, not for school, not for fresh air, not for anything. She was locked inside every single day, subjected to regular sexual abuse. Jose controlled every aspect of her life. He fed her scraps from his meals and made her document their relationship in journals so he could brag to his co-workers and friends. In a later interview, Tanya recalled, "He had me keep a calendar book of our sex acts, so I knew the dates. Fear kept her silent. He threatened to kill me in my sleep," she later told reporters. "He said he'd put me in a garbage bag and throw me in the river." For years, she remained a ghost. It wasn't until she turned 18 that Tanya made a shocking discovery. She was a missing person. She saw her name and photograph in the local newspaper, and yet she still didn't run. By then, she was completely brainwashed. Around the same time, Jose finally let her out of his bedroom. He gave her a new name, Nikki Allen, and introduced her to his family as his girlfriend, who would be moving in soon. She was allowed to leave the house, but only under strict conditions. She had a curfew. She had to clock watch every time she stepped outside. At first, the real world felt overwhelming. "I was like a deer in the headlights," she later said. But something changed. Being out among normal people, seeing how they lived, made her realize this was not love. Secretly, she took a small job at JJ's Deli Mart, run by Joe Sparrow. She formed friendships. She saw what a healthy family looked like. And then, she had a moment of clarity. "I saw how a family should be," she later reflected, "and I said, that's what I want." 10 years after she vanished, Tanya finally spoke up. In 2006, she confided in Joe Sparrow. She told him, "If you go to a website for missing children, you will see a picture of me." Joe wasted no time. He contacted his son, a retired police officer who knew all about Tanya's case. Within days, investigators were knocking on Jose's door. The man who had stolen Tanya's childhood was arrested. In 2007, Thomas Hose pleaded guilty to numerous charges, including statutory sexual assault, corruption of a minor, and aggravated indecent assault. He was sentenced to 15 years behind bars. At his hearing, Tanya stood before him, stronger than she had ever been, and delivered a powerful victim impact statement. "You took away my innocence, my childhood. You made me think my family didn't want me or love me, that no one cared about me but you. For 10 years you controlled me, but I am no longer your puppet." Justice had finally been served. Jose was released from prison in 2022 and is now a registered sex offender. As for Tanya, she reclaimed her life. In 2017, she co-wrote a book about her experience, Memoir of a Milk Carton Kid, The Tanya Kach Story. In 2018, she married and became a stepmother. But while she initially reconciled with her father, their relationship soured when he blamed her, at least partially, for what had happened to her. That was the final straw. They became estranged. Her mother, however, remained by her side. After everything, Tanya still believes that Joe Sparrow was her savior. When they reunited years later, they caught up on everything that had happened since that fateful day she told him the truth. Today, Tanya is an outspoken advocate for victims of grooming and sexual abuse. "We're in a different era now," she says, "but that stuff hasn't changed. How they groom you, how they lure you in, how they mentally take hold of you." Her story is one of unimaginable horror, but also of unimaginable strength. Tanya Kach is living proof that even after years of darkness, there is still a way back to the light. Paul Joseph Fronczak was born on April 26, 1964, at Michael Reese Hospital in Chicago, Illinois, to Chester and Dora Fronczak. However, the joy his parents felt at his birth was soon shattered when Paul vanished from the hospital. According to Dora, a woman dressed as a nurse entered her room and told her that the doctor wanted to examine the baby. Without hesitation, Dora handed over her newborn son, and he was never returned. The woman who had taken Paul was not a hospital staff member. She had managed to blend in, to appear legitimate. And then, just like that, she disappeared without a trace. The search for baby Paul Fronczak became the largest manhunt the city of Chicago had ever seen. It involved 175,000 postal workers, 200 police officers, and the FBI. Within 24 hours, authorities had searched 600 homes, desperately hoping to find any sign of the missing infant. but Paul was gone. News of the kidnapping spread across the country, making headlines and drawing nationwide attention. The Fronczaks made desperate pleas for their son's safe return. Dora, heartbroken, publicly begged, "We just want our baby back, and hope she will please take care of him." But despite the relentless investigation, tips and prayers, the case went cold. For 2 long years, Chester and Dora Fronczak mourned the loss of their baby, while investigators chased down every lead they could find. But at the time, forensic science was limited. Police told the grieving parents that their only real clues were blood type and ear shape, features that, back then, were considered as unique as fingerprints. Authorities examined the backgrounds of over 10,000 babies, yet none were identified as Paul. Then, in 1966, a glimmer of hope emerged. The FBI contacted the Fronczaks about an abandoned baby who had recently been placed in foster care. The child, known as Scott McKinley, had been discovered in July 1965 inside a baby carriage at a bustling shopping center in Newark, New Jersey. He had a black eye. Investigators had expected someone to come forward and claim him, but no one ever did. He remained in foster care, his origins a mystery. Authorities suspected that Scott might actually be Paul Fronczak, the missing baby from Chicago. He was the only child in their investigation who could not be ruled out. Dora and Chester traveled to New Jersey, hoping, praying, that this little boy was their son. Years later, Paul recalled the choice his mother faced that day. She could either say, "I'm not sure," and risk sending the child back into the system, or she could say, "Yes, that's my son," and give him a chance at a better life. She did what she thought was right, Paul later reflected, and I'm glad she did. For years, the Fronczaks lived as a happy family, but when Paul was 10 years old, his world began to crack. While searching for Christmas presents, he stumbled upon a hidden box filled with newspaper clippings about his own kidnapping. Confused and shaken, he confronted his parents. They admitted the truth. "You were kidnapped as a baby, but we found you. We love you. And that's all you need to know." Paul tried to move on, but the questions never left him. Who was he really? What had happened to him as a baby? As he grew older, the mystery of his past consumed him. "My dad had to leave work, go to the hospital, and tell my mom that their baby was missing. You think you're safe in a hospital, and that's where your baby is kidnapped." In 2012, Paul finally decided to seek the truth. He took a DNA test and asked his parents to do the same. To his surprise, they agreed. "For years, I had wanted to do a DNA test," he later admitted, "not because I wasn't happy, but because I needed to know the truth." However, just before he submitted the test, Chester and Dora called him. They begged him not to send it, but it was too late. The results changed everything. Paul Fronczak was not biologically related to Chester and Dora. There was no remote possibility that he was their son. "I remember getting that call," Paul recalled. "I felt the color drain from my face. I got all sweaty. Everything I thought I knew about myself, my birthday, my medical history, my nationality, my religion, even my zodiac sign, was gone. In that moment, I didn't know who I was. So who were his real parents? And what had happened to the actual Paul Fronczak?" The following year, a team of genealogists called the DNA detectives took on Paul's case. By June 2015, they had an answer. Paul was actually Jack Rosenthal, born in Atlantic City, New Jersey, in 1963. And he wasn't just missing, so was his twin sister, Jill. Paul soon learned that family members had suddenly stopped seeing Jack and Jill around the time they vanished. Their parents, Gilbert and Marie Rosenthal, always had excuses as to why the twins were unavailable. But disturbing details soon emerged. The twins had been severely neglected and abused. One relative recalled seeing them caged like animals. Another, a babysitter, was once told to leave the twins alone upstairs, but she checked on them anyway and found them in a filthy, empty room. The smell of urine was overwhelming, and both children were covered in dirt. Jack had a black eye. Paul was horrified. "My real parents were really not very nice people," he later said. "I'm thankful they abandoned me, because it allowed me to be with the Fronczaks. They saved my life." At first, Paul believed that something tragic had happened to Jill, and that he had been abandoned because his parents couldn't explain what had happened to one twin. But over time, his perspective changed. He started to believe that Jill might still be alive. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children created an age progression image of what Jill might look like today. Unfortunately, no infant photos of Jill exist. The portrait was based on images of various family members. Despite efforts to locate her, Jill Rosenthal remains missing. Gilbert and Marie Rosenthal both passed away in the 1990s, taking their secrets to the grave. Finally, in 2019, the real Paul Fronczak was found. His name was Kevin Ray Batty. Tragically, the announcement came in 2020, following his death on his 56th birthday. Before he passed, Kevin had spoken with Dora Fronczak several times over the phone, but heartbreakingly, they were never able to meet in person. Kevin had been raised by Lorraine Fountain, a woman who had been dating a Chicago doctor. At some point, she moved to Arkansas for a year and returned with baby Paul. But Lorraine passed away in 2004, and how she came to have the missing child remains a mystery. As of 2024, many questions remain. Who took baby Paul from the hospital? What truly happened to Jill Rosenthal? The investigation is ongoing, but for now, the answers remain just out of reach.